Did you ever have a need? A deep, dark desire for succulent chicken flavored with paprika, smothered with sour cream and eaten with dumplings? Let Daddy teach you.
I gotta not smile by saying dinner, Daddy. Okay, so this is hard to say without a straight face, but welcome to the first episode of Dinner Daddy. I decided to make this YouTube channel because I've been cooking every single meal almost for 15 years because I'm dirt poor and I have to. So in that time I've discovered like a lot of recipes and I want to share that with you guys. So today's first meal that I'm gonna do is called Chicken Paprikash. It's a Hungarian chicken dish and it's got a ton of paprika in it. Who would have guessed from the name? And sour cream. This is not a traditional way to make paprikash, nor is anything on my channel going to be traditional specifically. It's ways that I've changed things to my taste and made them more delicious in my opinion. So if you're looking for a traditional paprikash dish, I'm sure there's some out there. And it was a peasant food in the first place, so it had very basic ingredients. Chicken paprikash only has 4 or 5 ingredients if you do it traditionally. Today we're gonna just be adding a few extra ingredients into it to make it more delicious.
As for the non-traditional ingredients in this version, we're going to have Italian parsley, which is just going to be used at the end. We're going to have some garlic, and we're going to have a can of crushed tomatoes. Now, the garlic you would never find in this dish, which I find odd because garlic is delicious. Why wouldn't you put it in everything? And tomatoes are usually replaced in the normal dish with just broth or stock. We're gonna have some sour cream. I like this sour cream, and I would suggest that you get any cultured sour cream. It's extra tangy, so if you could find it, definitely get it. It will add a huge tang to the dish that you wouldn't get from just a normal sour cream. Next, we have bone-in and skin-on chicken thighs. You want to make sure that you have both because the fat content from underneath the skin is going to enhance the flavor of the dish. Next, we're going to have some all-purpose flour. We're going to use this instead of like a bread flour or something because we want a lower gluten content because the dumplings will turn kind of bready if you have a lot of gluten. And to actually help that, we're going to be adding in sour cream to the dough, which will help make it so that it is even less gluten formed because fats will inhibit the formation of gluten in flour. So that's the only reason we're adding that other than the buttery flavor. Next, we got some salt. We have more paprika than you think that you need. I have about 2.5 or 3 tablespoons here, but we can add or subtract more. And we have an onion and some eggs and this grater that I never use. Now you're going to want to move the chicken to a cutting board and then realize that you should move it to the smaller cutting board because you're going to need that other cutting board to actually cut the chicken. Now you're going to want to remove all the extra skin that's on the side of the thighs, as well as all the extra fat and gristle and little pieces of bone that you find in there. Sometimes chicken thighs can be a little sketchy looking, but once you cook them, they'll taste delicious. They're not as clean looking as chicken breasts, but you're going to want that high fat content that chicken thighs have to make this dish superior. Next, you're going to want to chop up your onion. You don't have to be super fancy about it. You want somewhat smaller pieces of onion because you want it to semi-dissolve into the gravy. You don't want big chunks of onion unless that's your thing. I personally like it to dissolve a little bit, even though I'm a huge fan of onions. I think it just meshes better in this dish if the onions are smaller. Then you're going to go ahead and put your garlic in your press if you have one. If you don't have a garlic press, you can just mince it. It's fine. There's no big difference really. This is just way easier, so I just use the garlic press when I can. Although if you do mince it, you can get it finer than you can in the garlic press, and that will give you a stronger garlic flavor if that's what you're looking for. Or you can just press it and then chop it. Next up, you're going to want to add a neutral grain oil to your heated pan. Anything like vegetable oil or canola oil, anything without a high flavor or a really low smoke point is going to work. And then you're just going to want to put in your chicken one piece at a time. Try to not push it too far together, but if you have to, it's going to tense up and become smaller in the pan. Like right now, I was able to fit 6 pieces in this pan, but I could have probably fit 7 or 8 if I would have let it cook just a minute and then put the other chicken in there, so it's up to you how many you think you can fit. Every so often, just come in and give it just a little bit of a move around, just to get the oil under all the pieces of the chicken skin to make sure that everything is cooking evenly. Now, we're really not timing this exactly, so we're just going to look at the bottom to see how it's looking. We want it to be a good golden brown on the skin side, and you can see on that it was still pretty light, so that we still need more cooking time. So these have been in for about 6.5 minutes now, and they're starting to get pretty golden. That's the color you're looking for. You don't want it any more dark than this really, or else it'll start scorching a little bit and the skin will pull back too much. And if it pulls back too much when you're cooking it in the gravy later, then it will just kind of fall apart and slide off, and you won't get those nice pieces of chicken skin. And just go ahead and flip over the entire batch, and you're just going to let that side cook the same way you did it on the skin side. Go ahead and take out your chicken thighs and put them on either a rack or just some paper towels to drain some of the grease. As for the rest of the grease inside the pan, you're just going to want to pour out all of it except about 1.5 tablespoons, because you're going to use that to fry the onions. Put all your onions in the pan. Make sure you get that over there quick as soon as you pour the grease off, because you don't want to burn all that delicious fond on the bottom, or else it'll make your dish a little bit bitter. So we're going to add a little bit of salt to the onions to help break the cell walls down while we're cooking it, and that will help these not caramelize, but sweat a little bit quicker. Now, after sauteing for a while, it will turn this color, almost caramelized. That's where I'm going to stop. If you want a less oniony dish, then just keep it going, but I'm going to stop here. Now here's where the namesake of the dish and its main flavor comes in. We're going to use some sweeter Hungarian paprika. Make sure that you get Hungarian if you can. I don't usually measure, but I'm just doing this for the video. It's going to look like it's more paprika than you need, and here I have about 2 tablespoons, a little bit more than that. I would suggest about 3 tablespoons for this amount. It's going to be really, really paprika-y. We're going to stir this around a little bit just to, smoke that flavor a little bit. But if you let this go too long, you're going to burn it, because paprika burns really quickly, and you will get a bitter dish if you do that. So once you've added as much paprika as you want, I've added about another tablespoon, and let it get a little bit dark in color. You're going to go ahead and add your tomatoes. These are just regular crushed tomatoes, and you can see I add quite a bit because I like a lot of the gravy. If you want less, then be my guest. The traditional dish right here, you would just add chicken stock, but I think the tomatoes add a great flavor to the dish, and I can't imagine eating it without after I've tried it. And now we're going to put the chicken in. I like to put the skin side up, because the longer it's away from being directly into the gravy, then the skin will hold up. It's still going to get chewy and all that gumminess that you get from braising any kind of chicken skin, but the longer you have it out, it won't tend to disintegrate into the dish. So when it's done, you get all that delicious Maillard reaction taste when it's off the stove. Now you can go ahead and put on the lid, turn this down to a low heat so it's just simmering, and we're going to cook this for about 45 minutes to an hour. I usually go about 45, but you can do it a little bit longer if you want it more tender. It's up to you. Every 10 minutes or so, you're going to want to just move around the gravy a little bit, because you don't want it to stick on the bottom, because if it sticks, you're going to have burned paprika, and it's really bitter, and it can ruin your whole dish. So just move it around slightly, just make sure everything's not burning. Check your temperature. If you need to turn it down, turn it down, turn it up if you gotta. Now about the halfway mark, which for me was about 25 minutes, just go ahead and flip the chicken over to skin side down, and we're just going to repeat the same process that we had. So every little bit, 10 minutes or so, you're going to gum in, and you're just going to stir it around and make sure that nothing's sticking. Alright, so while that's finishing up cooking, we're going to go ahead and make the nokedli. If you never made this kind of dough before, it's pretty simple. It's just going to be between pancake batter and bread. So we're just going to add 2 cups of flour here. You can just add as much as you want. This is all eyeballing it. You can't measure this, because unless you use really precise measurements, which I don't, So go ahead and add 2 cups of the flour. Next, we're going to add 2 eggs to the middle of that. Add some salt to taste, but we're going to add a little bit more than you think you need because we're not going to be salting our water like you would in Italian pasta. And now we're going to add some sour cream, which is not traditional, but I find that it makes it more buttery flavored, and also the fat inside of the sour cream will make it so that gluten is harder to form inside the dumpling, because as soon as you start getting too much gluten in there, it's going to start turning into somewhat of a bread dish instead of a dumpling. Go ahead and add water as well. This is not a measurement. You're just going to keep adding water and stirring until you get to the consistency that you want. Once it starts looking about this consistency and maybe a tiny bit thinner, that's good to go. I ended up adding a little bit more water off camera, so anywhere around there is going to be perfect. Now to actually make the dumplings, you're just going to spread the dough on a cutting board, dip your knife in the hot water, and then just cut off little pieces, whatever size you want. These ones I'm doing are about medium sized. I think they're the best of both worlds. And we're gonna do this in batches, so after you cut off a little bit, you're gonna wait for them to float to the top, and then after they've been floating for about 30 seconds, you're just gonna want to strain them out with a hold spoon or whatever you got, and put them in a colander to drain. I lined the bottom of this colander with a little bit of oil so nothing sticks. And then you're just gonna add a little bit of butter and melt it on there to the top, so while you finish your dish, the dumplings don't all stick together, and it'll give it a nice buttery flavor. For the parsley, we're just gonna roll it up into a tight ball and slice it. This is known as a chiffonade, and that will give us roughly chopped parsley, which doesn't lead like a huge flavor to it, but it's pretty. At this point, we're gonna test our seasoning to see if it's salty enough. Mine need a little bit more salt, but it's all up to you. Don't over salt it, but you are going to be adding sour cream after this, so your flavorings might change a little bit, so don't overdo it. We're just going to add a few dollops of your sour cream. I tend to like my paprikash very sour creamy, but add as much or as little as you want, but it's definitely one of the main flavoring ingredients into this, so feel free to add as much as you want. It really smooths out the flavor and gives it a really luxurious, silky, delicious flavor. And once it's all mixed up, just go ahead and taste it for seasoning to add any more salt or anything you need at the very end. Mine turned out pretty good, so I didn't have to add anything else.
Okay, so our food turned out pretty tasty. I'm gonna give it one bite since I am on a diet. Get some of that sauce, some of the extra sour cream in there. Oh, that sauce is so good. The paprika is not overpowering. And I add a lot of more sour cream than most people do, and I think it's just delicious. Let's try these little dumplings. Turned out perfect. And that little bit of sour cream that we added to it really makes them buttery. And then, I mean, we added butter too, but it really brings out the flavor a lot more than just the regular recipe, which only calls for salt, water, and flour, and eggs. All right, so that's about all for this first episode. I'm gonna try to upload twice a week. So I guess subscribe if you like this, and then I'll see you on Friday for the next video. Peace.